Are we going to start with your question? No.
Maybe the others? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Did you have a question?
Oh, that's right. Before the break, Kathleen, you had your hand up, so why don't we go with her and then we'll do Jack. Okay.
My question was sort of like the last one. It seems like there's a lot of non-judgment built in, but then in practice, it seems like it could, practically speaking, break down sort of more into, well, this is where you are in your life, and it's sort of okay that you are where you are, and there's no impetus to necessarily have to change throughout the course of your life. So I was wondering, is that where the caste system plays into all this? The idea that you can be in your life in a particular spot, and it's sort of okay that there's a hierarchy because that's where you are in this life.
It's okay. There are really two questions there,
Yeah.
and let's take each of them. One question is, if everything is fine the way it is, where's the impetus to go do better? The impetus really comes from your own sorrow. So you discover sorrow. You discover every now and again that something makes you really unhappy. And you lose a family member, something happens, all your money is gone, your house is burnt down, whatever happens. So something throws you into the deep end of life. And as you're drowning there, you say, hey, there has to be a better way, right? And that's when, in the Bhagavad Gita is a verse that says, Krishna says, people come to me when they are in trouble, when they want things, when they know, and when they wish to know. So those are the four kinds of motivations that people have to come to God.
Could you repeat those, please?
When they're in trouble, when they want things, when they know things, and when they wish to know. So they know things meaning he's realized. So he's realized he's just with God and being, just enjoying it. When you wish to know, you're trying to learn things, then also you go for guidance and teaching. So that's where the impetus is. And, there's no shortage of that impetus in life. The problem is that we don't learn the lesson. Somebody sent me a joke once. If, there's somebody who telephoned God and said, why do you keep sending trouble to us? You're supposed to be a compassionate fellow. So he said, yeah, that's true, but that's how you learn. Otherwise, how do you learn? And that's why I have to send you troubles. So he said, we can learn without troubles, couldn't we? So he said, sure, that option was always open. So, with all of these troubles, still people don't realize. And in fact, you realize for a little while and then suddenly everything's going fine and then off it's gone again. So, more trouble or next life or whatever, right? Caste system. Some connection, but let me just talk about the caste system. There are, we've talked about the idea that there are many kinds of people, right? Some people like to study. Not everyone likes to study. When I said this at the middle school yesterday, they said, oh yeah, of course. Some people are good at athletics. They go work out, get strong, and no one messes with them. Not everyone is like that. Some people have a good business sense and can find a way to make a buck in every situation. And they enjoy it. Others don't. So, given that there are different kinds of people, all these people are necessary in society. So, the origin of the caste system was simply that recognition. A simple statement that in a society there are people who there are people who like to study, and they are called Brahmins. And because you study, there's also an obligation that you must teach. So the Brahmins have the obligation to preserve knowledge and to teach so that knowledge goes to the next generation. And they must do so without looking for money. So in our tradition, nobody pays the teacher. You just give donations to the teacher because the teacher is not working for a salary. So in a village, there would be a few Brahmins who would be responsible for this, and the rest of the village would provide food and other sort of general sustenance. And that was it. There would be no cash transactions even. So that's one category. The next category are the guys who are powerful, and they are known as Kshatriyas. This literally means to protect. So if you are physically strong, you have an obligation to protect the weak around you. So typically this was the king, and he had to maintain law and order in any society. So strength goes with the obligation to protect. The third, the money maker, the productive money makers, Vaishyas. These are the people who are in farming, in industry or business and finance. What obligation do you think goes with that? To be giving. So you make money and you pay your taxes and you give to the Brahmin who is teaching your children, and to the Kshatriya who is protecting and making sure that people aren't robbing you. So that's the obligation of the Vaishya. Now there's a fourth category of people who say, just tell me what to do. I don't have any special talents. Just tell me what to do, I'll do it. Non-leadership kind of person. And those are known as the Shudras. And the purpose of that and the obligation of the Shudra is to do what he's told. That's how it started. Then two things happened. One, it became hereditary. So the son of a Brahmin was expected to want to learn, to study. The son of a Kshatriya was expected to be strong. Didn't always work that way. So you had problems. And the second thing that happened was that people, human nature, you began to exploit your position to lord it over the others. So the Brahmin said, I am in charge of knowledge. If you want to engage in any ritual or any kind of prayer, you have to come to me. I am the one who can summon God for you. The Kshatriya became very egotistical, and he would ignore the Brahmin, ignore education, and oppress people and have a good time. So these kinds of oppressions started. And over centuries, that got entrenched. So you have a caste system that became a complete abomination. Something that started as simply a functional division in society, which you have everywhere. In all societies, you have to have those divisions. It became rigid, hierarchical, oppressive, to the point where it was really shameful. And a couple of centuries ago, social reformers were working hard to overcome a lot of this. And when India became independent in 1947, a law in the constitution was a law prohibiting discrimination by caste. This is analogous to the Civil Rights Act, And similarly, it's illegal doesn't mean it doesn't happen. So it's still there, but less and less and less. In urban situations, you can't have this anyway. And so as modernity comes through society, the caste system has become very mixed up, and it's illegal. Yeah,
The system itself is illegal?
yeah. Caste, any discrimination is illegal.
Oh,
Marriage is only place where it shows up. You know, all the marriage ads, if you read them, you'll say such and such, such and such. And oh, another thing. Caste is not 4. There are 3,000. 3,000. They are communities. So what has happened actually is that in the scripture was this fourfold division of society. In society, there were all these clans, you know, this clan, sub-clan, etc. And those then got conflated, and some clans became Brahmin clans, and some became Kshatriyas, or some became Vaishyas. Then that's how the hereditariness came in. So actually there are something like 3,000 subcastes, because the word caste actually is a Portuguese word. In the Indian languages there is no word for caste. There's one word which is varna, V-A-R-N-A, which is those 4, and another word. So the 2 words are varna and jati. Varna is these fourfold things, which means color, basically, or literally doesn't even mean color. Literally means that which needs to be described. Looking at me, you can't tell whether I'm a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Shudra, or whatever. I need to tell you I'm a Brahmin or not. Jati is a community. So, jati you can even tell, you know, depending on whether I have black or white or green, or my nose is big, small, what kind of lips I have, what kind of hair I have, I can tell roughly what ethnicity you come from. So the varna and the jati were conflated, and then in marriage ads people would say, I am such and such, such and such, such and such, such and such, wanting such and such, such and such, such and such, such and such. And I was very amused. Reading at the Washington Post, there's a similar kind of category of S, B, G, L, M, N, so you have that same kind of system. So
it's just not as pure as yours, trust me.
well, it is, God knows. So that's the caste system as it is today. Yes.
And also, which he was also asking, I think, were about the untouchables as well. Were you alluding to that?
No, I was just more saying, and I explained a bit how you could have a system that gets stuck like that.
Yeah. And you know, prosperity, curiously, also leads to stuckness. And India was a very prosperous country long ago. So people just relaxed, and that's what they were doing. Indeed, sorry, you're quite right. There's one more element to my answer which I should have brought in. What the scripture says, that you should do what is your dharma. Don't try and do somebody else's dharma. Now, the word dharma is already complicated enough, but I haven't said 2 important things. One, that dharma is dependent on time and place and circumstance. So, time, place, circumstance. So what is dharma for me is not necessarily the dharma for you. And what is dharma for me today is not necessarily the dharma for me tomorrow.
Right.
Or in this situation is not my dharma in another situation. This makes it complicated. So what the scripture says, figure out your dharma and stick with it. Don't try and do somebody else's stuff, because that's slippery and you will get in trouble. So stick to what your own dharma is, and in doing so, then go up this ladder. Because if while you're doing this, you're also trying to figure out, somebody else's dharma, then you are going to get confused, distracted.
Right.
So that's another reason why there's a sort of a lack of mobility, if you like,
Okay.
right? And it's an antithesis of what the culture is here. You know, here everyone should be able to go and do everything,
Right.
which is the exact opposite of that teaching.
But then in part of your dharma may be to create a circumstance in which someone else could realize their dharma.
Oh yes, no, not only could, it has to be.
Right.
It has to be. Because every part of society has to function, do its bit, so that the whole of society functions well. And the difference is that you don't have a presumption that individuals can go trotting around from one part to another, right? And that's the difference. Yes?
No, this is a follow-up to what you
Sure.
just said. Do you feel that based on the American culture and society, that there is a difference in American Hinduism and what actually occurs or is fostered in India?
Well, that's true in India as well. You know, modernity is mobility, right? So, and as you open opportunities for education to everybody, then there is mobility. And that's good. Because, you know, the current staticness is this hereditary oppressive staticness, right? So you break it open and let people, you know, if there's somebody who is smart, let that person get educated and then do something which his parents wouldn't dream of his doing, right? So that's good. So it's happening very much in India now. Yes.
I don't know how to ask this question properly, but I'll do my best. Within cultures and societies, usually a religion is a paradigm through which they create social harmony and peace. It's usually a reflection of the culture, but sometimes the culture is also a reflection of the religion. Comparatively speaking, how do you see Hinduism and its relationship with and impact on some of the less harmonious factors in society? For example, divorce, crime, suicide, warfare, illness, pollution. How does that relate with India in terms of Hinduism serving as a path for the nation to walk in terms of keeping the country safe,
Sure.
sound, and healthy? And happy?
Let's think of various kinds of conflict, okay, and then see where does Hinduism, what does Hinduism have to say about that. One is religious conflict. And there, you know, Hinduism has a very simple position, which is the truth is universal, mysterious, nobody can really claim that they have it. Everyone is looking for it. And all paths that lead to truth are good. So here are all these paths, and if somebody else has other paths, that's fine too. So Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, any ism is fine, as long as they're all moving forward towards truth, looking for the absolute truth. That's fine. So philosophically, there is no reason to object to somebody else's religious beliefs. That's not reciprocated. You know, some other religions don't have that. So then that's one kind of conflict, which we know, which is hard to resolve, frankly. Another question you raised was pollution and stuff like that, where the philosophy is that everything is divine. So air, water, you know, we have gods. We have when I say gods, I mean manifestations of the one. So there's a manifestation that is the god of air. Water, sun, moon, you know, from this cosmic person, which is one way to think of the creator, the eyes became the sun, the mind became the moon. So all of these are divine in themselves. So in all animals and all birds, as I was saying, we try and get an understanding of the sacredness. Sorry. An understanding of the sacredness everywhere. So pollution comes from a simple violation of the philosophy. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen, right? But it's a straight violation of philosophy. So if you ask, is the human the steward of nature, or was nature created for humans to consume? That's a sort of standard question. Hindus would say both or neither. There is a cosmic process involving the divine, involving all of the physical forces, including human beings. We have an obligation to play our part in this cosmic process. And if we fail to do that, again, a verse from the Bhagavad Gita says, somebody who doesn't realize this cosmic process and goes against it, lives life in vain. So it's just totally against the philosophy, or even practice actually. So there again, practicality is different. So we have to recognize, and every now and again you remind yourself that you're part of the cosmic process. And now and then you forget. Other forms of conflict, remind me what you...
War, suicide, mental health.
Wars is a difficult one because it's a matter of dharma. Remember, Bhagavad Gita is set in a war, right? Krishna is teaching Arjuna as the two armies are gathered for battle. And Arjuna looks across to the other army and finds his own uncles and cousins and grandfather and granduncle and so on. He says, hi, I can't find this. So, pacifist, right? And Bhagavad Gita says, rubbish, your job is to go fight. Now, everybody, a lot of people are totally thrown by this. Here is this scripture that's actually telling people to go fight. And the answer is back to dharma. And later on in the scripture, Krishna says to Arjuna, look, even if I told you not to fight, your nature would have forced you in the end to fight. Because that is the dharma that is of a warrior. So this is a dharmic war, just war. So there's a whole background to that as to how one side systematically cheated the other out of the kingdom. So they did everything they were supposed to be doing, and in the end, they still weren't given their share of the kingdom. So they had to fight for it. This is part of the game. Crime. Asteya, do not steal.
Right.
Simple. Now, then comes what punishment? Right? And that's, again, a moral question. One of the things about Hinduism is that is a sharp distinction made between, I don't know if I'm using these phrases correctly, between the things of God and the things of Caesar. The scriptures are about moksha and how to train your mind so that you are able to deal with the world in the best possible way and purify your mind to the point where you are then above it. That's what there's one level of scriptures called Shruti, which means revealed. There's another level of scriptures called Smriti, which means remembered. Those deal with all of these questions. And the Smriti part, the second level of scriptures, are not at the same level at all. So, quite unlike some other systems, these laws are made by humans and can be changed, subject to time and place. So each time cycle, there is a lawgiver who produces some of these laws. And the set of laws for our system now some of them are abominable. And we pay no attention to that. And I'm not in the least bit embarrassed to say I pay no attention to these laws, because it's a second level of reality. So the question of how do you punish somebody who has murdered someone? The real punishment is in the kingdom of God, in the karmic cycle. Oh, that's another big topic. Karma. The real punishment is in karma. What does karma mean? Karma, I told you, means action. So one of the very strong laws in our system is that every action has a consequence. It's like the law of physics. No one except God himself can disturb that relationship. And so in philosophical discussion, if somebody puts forward a position where this law is violated, they say, can't be. The philosophical system must accept every law has a consequence. Every action has a consequence. That consequence comes back to the person who engages in the action. It may come back in this life or in future lives. So, if I'm here in time, what I'm experiencing now is a result of what I did in my past lives. So that is my destiny. Yes?
I was getting ready to ask the question of the many lives.
Ah.
I was wondering if you die and you come back and die, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So do you know of any other life that you lived?
No.
No, you don't
No,
remember?
I don't remember, but doesn't mean no one remembers.
Oh, okay.
There are people who do. It's just more convenient not to remember. And that's the scriptures say that in the birth canal, in the fetus, in the womb, the fetus remembers and says, oh, I made such a mess of my last life. And this time I'm going to do better. And makes all these resolutions. And then in the birth canal, there's an energy that erases the hard drive. So it's all gone. So you come back and then you remember it. So I'll come back to this question of how rebirth happens. But so what I experience in this life is a result of what I did in previous lives. That's destiny. So Western scholars say, fatalistic. This is a fatalistic system because you have experienced. That's it. That's my destiny. But what I do in this life will affect me in future lives. So if I'm interested in my future welfare, I jolly well do the right thing in this life. So this is a two-edged kind of situation. When I experience something, I accept it as being, that's what I have to accept. So I don't fight it, because that's the way it is. I'm not upset, and I can be upset, angry, but if I remind myself, that's it. That's the way I have to accept it. At the same time, I have to be very mindful of what I do, because that's what's going to determine my future. So, punishment. If I do something in this life, nobody finds out, let's say. I get no punishment at all. But the recorder upstairs has it all written down. And we have a name for that person. It's called Chitragupta. Chitragupta means the one with a secret video camera. So Chitra is a video, picture, and Gupta is secret. So the one with the secret video camera, you can't fool him. So whatever thought has gone in your mind, that's recorded as well. So I pay the price for whatever I do. The way in which society punishes me or doesn't punish me is a matter for society. It's a matter of how you want society to organize itself. So there's nothing divinely ordained about what punishment I should get. That's a matter for society. Yeah.
Well, let me follow up a little more clearly then, because I'm starting to
Yeah.
process this myself. India is a people, and Hinduism is a religion, and both together is one. How can we look at India and see, like, what are your divorce rates? What are your crime rates? What are your suicide rates compared to a Western Judeo-Christian environment? How does this benefit society in a way that it wouldn't others?
That's a tough one because, you know, you're dealing with human nature. You're not dealing with philosophers.
Absolutely.
Right?
But also culture, too,
And yeah,
and environment.
everything,
Physical.
everything. So, and the culture puts lots of limits to things. You know, people got married. I mean, for instance, take the marriage thing. Traditionally, people didn't, well, even that's not true. You know, by the way, one professor said, you know, at American University there used to be a professor of Hinduism. And he said, he told his students, whatever you say about Hinduism, never say never. Because everything exists. There's an exception to everything. And you can never make an absolute statement because there's some corner, some problem, some exception. So traditionally, I was going to say it used to be arranged marriages. Not true. Scriptures have plenty of situations where they chose each other.
Love marriages.
Love marriage. What's called love marriage. Now there's this big question: arranged marriage or love marriage? I don't think there's a big difference. Because you know, people go into love marriages 3/4 blind, right? And then
That's
whatever.
generous.
That's generous.
And arranged marriages, you know, the parents decide, the two are brought together and then told, okay, you make a go of it. And for a while, there's just no way, just make a go of it. So it's not clear. People have been married 50 years and they never articulate, you know, the words, I love you. Don't come out of a Hindu easily because it's in the action. And there are people who have married 50 years to each other who would never ever have said to each other, I love you. But they are totally confident about the other person's love.
So what are divorces like in India? Like, what
It's
would you
growing.
say?
It's growing
We have
very rapidly.
50% here.
Really?
It's well, you know, it's difficult to get the statistic because it's growing very rapidly. It used to be very low, but that didn't mean you didn't have unsuccessful marriages. You know, both sort of sulked away, and that was it. You didn't divorce. You just stayed together, and that was it. And you had independent lives in some ways. You know, people think that this is in a patriarchal system, the woman can't have a life by herself. No, in the Indian system, women had their own societies and all kinds of activities at different levels. Certain parts of the home were entirely the province of the woman. Other things were entirely the province of the man. And together, they were both happy. Certain activities the woman would go off and do by herself. So no joint activities, really. But very complicated. That's all I can say.
Is there more crime there
Crime,
than here?
more crime. Again, how do you find out? You know, because it's a matter of reporting. Same problems. Yeah, others. Yes.
With the crime issue, here in Beatty,
Yeah.
from India, is a woman who was in charge of the penitentiary system, and she's written a
Oh,
book.
Kiran Bedi. Yes.
Kiran Bedi,
Yes.
and she also was the head of the security forces at the UN. I heard her speak at the UN, and she revolutionized the prison system in India and has been a speaker around the world with this very thing. I mean, there were lots of people in the prisons where she dealt with them, but one of the first things that she did was, when she met a group of maybe 30 of the prisoners, they were thinking they'd be berated, and she asked the question, how do you pray?
Yeah.
And they were just stunned. And it was from that question and the series of meditations and the things that she did with them in prison, how the whole system just reformed.
And that's being done here, by the way, now. You know, there are Hindu and Buddhist meditation groups that have taken meditation to the prisons. And they find that that's the best way to reduce anger. So they're transformed. And, you know, maybe if I were to generalize, and it's just a
I'm just
pop,
trying to say
pop,
that
pop,
religion-
pop psychology generalization, there is less anger in India.
I've seen that.
Yeah?
I've never been there, but I've seen many movies and videos and interviews and of society and stuff, and people seem to be pretty content.
And one of the things that people realize when you visit India, you go to Bombay and so on, you see these slums, it's just terrible situations. You know, there are families living on the pavement with, you know, just a piece of gunny sacking. Do you understand gunny sacking? On top. That's their shelter. And they're generations. And you look at the children, they're happy. You know, somebody is doing a job, you look at their eyes, they're just cheerful, and, you know, I've seen them grow up that way. And it's very difficult from a Western perspective to even begin to comprehend how someone can be happy in that situation. Objectively, they're not happy. I mean, if you ask them, you know, they're dying of dysentery half the time. But when they're there, they're cheerful. So,
Yeah, see,
You had a question.
That's where I was going.
That is kind of my question, is, I'm trying to make this make sense to me. If I was a woman that was raped, is that because of my karma? How am I supposed to be happy? I'm sensing that I can't find this happiness in the sense, you know, in this place of injustice happening to me. Or my children are dying before my eyes.
yeah.
Or my two boys are fighting with each other. How do I find happiness in that moment when really bad things are happening?
Yeah.
So everything's
One of,
personal.
the way one of my teachers put it, what happens to you is God's gift to you. And what you do with it is your gift to God. So, you know, things happen for whatever reason. There is no one on earth who can explain why somebody should be raped, why somebody deserves to be raped. There's no possible, you know, explanation. So it happens. In the karmic model, at least you have a way in which you accept it, and you go forward. It's because you need some way to go forward.
Right.
And there's no other way, really.
Yeah, it's almost like forgiveness. There was a show last night on forgiveness, where a man who, two men were together, one man's grandson killed this other man's son. And they worked it out, their best, you know, their friends, they forgave each other. And they forgave, the father of the boy who was killed forgave the boy who killed his, and it's been the forgiveness that they found peace and harmony and were able to do good things, because they go out and they talk to groups of children about forgiveness.
Precisely, and that too is a very practical thing. You know, in yoga, there's a statement that my mind takes on the form of the object that I'm thinking of. Okay? So if I'm thinking of a bottle, my mind is taking the form of bottle. That's how bottle gets registered in my mind. So if I'm thinking enemy, my mind takes on form enemy. And that burns up my mind.
Right.
So my mind is where the hostility is causing the most damage. And so forgiveness is a very practical way to understand that, you know, cool your own mind down. Because, you know, you may be plotting revenge on somebody, right?
Right.
Now that person is going about his life fine. He doesn't know you're plotting revenge. He doesn't know what he's done wrong. He's just enjoying himself. And you are killing yourself, plotting revenge. So it's all the way in which you train your mind. Lots of hands up. Sorry, yes?
You said women have things that they do, but are they subservient to men?
You know, that's $1 million question. You know, in a lot of traditional societies, you have to figure out how you measure subservience. Who is calling the shots, really, not who appears to be calling the shots. And there's a lot of difference between the two. Yes?
So trying to take all of this in and put it in a context of these students becoming counselors.
Yeah.
I guess there are a number of questions, but one is, how likely is it that someone of the Hindu religion would actually seek out counseling from someone outside of their religion or in general? Because it sounds like you counsel each other and you are very much supportive of each other as a community, as a culture, as a religion.
True, but you know, it changes so rapidly in this society. Because as Hindu families get assimilated, the younger generation is brought up entirely in an American way. And something which I don't know if you get into at all, who are the Hindus in America? You know, what is their demographic, so to speak, right? And the big proportion, until 1965, there was no immigration from India here. It's the Civil Rights Act that it had impact on immigration laws, and for the first time, Indians were allowed to immigrate to the US. And the people who came here were the ones who were the professionally best trained. You know, the doctors, the engineers, mostly doctors, because that's what the US was giving visas for at that point. So these are all very motivated workaholics, actually, who showed up. And their children, born here, were brought up in the American system. There's no language problem, they spoke English, and they were just thoroughly American. Except in some parts, right? And depending on the family, small part, big part, whatever. So when you see that generation in life, there is no difference. There's some deep difference maybe, but you know, at the superficial level, very little difference. So, yes.
So I was also thinking from like a counseling perspective, or really just from a perspective of abnormal psychology. What I appreciate, and I had already mentioned this to you, Dr. Rao, but is there's a significant amount of personal responsibility within Hinduism, but there's also a great sense of community, whether it's through karmic cycle or, you know, just doing the right thing based on your environment and true to yourself. But like we've talked about, to figure out your own dharma and how to do it right is, if you will, a hot mess. And we're only human, so even though our true essence would be Om, it's a mess. What I keep thinking of is people who are suffering psychologically to the point of psychosis, or even something that would just be more personality disorder, like narcissistic personality disorder, and their sense of happiness, or their sense of who they are, and you know, at their deepest level that they can reach, is not what we, at least in this room, would call healthy or even real. Yeah. And that's on the far end of the spectrum, but people experience that, even just stress takes people away from their true selves. So how does this faith function, or how should we be aware that it can function with people who are, you know, to the point of psychosis, or have experienced so much trauma that their sense of self is not reachable?
Yeah. Well, you know, before you get that far, release of stress, there are many systems in here, especially here, but also here, that are designed to relieve stress. Simple breathing, for instance. You know, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the distinction between breathing from the chest and breathing from the diaphragm. As simple as that. And that's part of Yoga Sutras 200 BC. Breathe from the diaphragm. symbols, and lots of things like that. So you may get advice from each other on something like that. Just maintaining bodily health and dealing with the stresses of life. Then when you get further afield from that, it gets more and more difficult, right? And then you're in a place where you need sort of professional help. In between, there's a place where you counsel each other. You know, you're having marital problems, you go to a friend, an older relative or somebody, and that person knocks your heads together. You know, that kind of thing goes on. But if it doesn't work, then it goes to the professional realm. So I guess what's more likely is that Hindus would come to professionals further down the pike, not early in there. Because there's also the old social stigma about seeing psychiatrists, you know. So that's quite deep. So that's all I can share on that subject. Yes?
Is Hinduism as a religion taught to the young people in India in their schools?
No. We are secular constitution, so there are actually very strong prohibitions about teaching anything vaguely religious in schools. It's probably even worse than here.
So how do the young people learn their religion?
Osmosis. No, really, I mean it.
Really.
And so it's what happens at home, the functions they go to, because we have lots and lots of festivals. So every month or two there's something, some birth of this or something. October 30th there is Diwali, which is a very big festival. So any of you who want to go to the Patriot Center between 12 noon and 10 p.m. or 8 p.m. or something, roll up, it's, you know, all kinds of stuff going on. And right now is a very major festival actually, you know, the month before Diwali. So in these festivals, things happen and they learn a little bit. Or they're just taught mother's knee stories and things like that. Again, big problem here, because, you know, where is the mother's knee here? Off at work, often. So you have a real breakdown, and then you have some groups that are trying to do some Sunday school kind of teachings, but we don't have materials which are well designed for teaching children at different levels. So that's still work in progress.
Wow.
In our printout, we had, this just interests me, on page 6 it said something, I'm not sure if I'm saying this right, but Mahakumbh
Yeah.
was at
Prayagraj, yeah.
is estimated to have drawn 80 million pilgrims in 1 month in 2001, and I was wondering what month, because I was wondering when
January.
January, so
Yeah,
it was
I was there.
before 9/11.
Yeah, I was there. No, it was 2001, January to February, you know, mid-Jan to mid-Feb. In fact, on one day, there were 24 million people in an area of, say, 3-4 miles square, just going through, having their bath in the river and going out. Very orderly. It was just unbelievably peaceful, quiet, orderly place.
Wow.
And you know, it all happens in a river bed, because there's no place. It's in January because the river is at the lowest. So they have huge river bed, and what they do is put steel plates on the river bed for roads, stick some lights and sanitation. People bring big tents, live in them, cook food, and all of them. Or they drive in with trucks. Sometimes some trucks have 2 layers of people. You know, the back of the truck there's a mezzanine, so people sit at one level and then sit on the mezzanine, and you know, I don't know how many 100 people come in one truck. So that's the way that places are. It is very quiet, really very nice. Any questions? I should have said this earlier. There's no question that can offend me, so please, whatever you want to ask. Yeah.
This handout we have, it it says that Vishnu appears on earth from time to time
Yes.
to cleanse the world?
Yeah. That's part of this cosmic process. Human nature being what it is, from the time of creation, from the time of, you're on earth, over generations human nature deteriorates. We sort of, law of entropy, I guess, whatever. So people become more and more animal-like, and they more and more forget their role in the cosmic process. So God comes and has to do some cleanup. So there are people who are especially wicked. This is all, at a gross level, but if you think more at a individual level, our own animal tendencies, the things that we know we shouldn't be doing, we need some process by which that gets cleaned out.
Right.
So appearance of God is in that sense as well. So that's the context. You had a question.
I do. I'm just seeing some familiar words up here. One is the sutras.
Yes.
What is sutras again?
Sutra is an aphorism, a very compact way of saying something.
Okay. It's going to be kind of a funny question. Kama Sutra.
Yes.
This is what makes me think of that.
Yes.
Is that, I'm trying to understand that did that come from Hinduism?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Is that about two people finding in different positions the holiness in each other type thing? Is that the design of
I have not read them. I'm sorry
I
to say.
haven't either, but I've heard.
Yeah, but the sutra concept, everything is taught in the form of sutras. There's sutra for dancing, sutras for music, sutras for astrology, sutras for horse riding, sutras for archery. So everything is taught in that way. So Kama Sutra means the sutras for love or relationship. And I imagine what it is about how best partners can satisfy each other. So it's like a technological treatise. And all of these things are also done in a very philosophical way, because there is no distinction in life between that which is spiritual and that which is not. Our whole lives have to reflect our attitude to spirituality. Another question, yes?
So there's no real concept of evil in Hinduism. It would be more about the forgetfulness of your dharma or yourself.
Yes, absolutely. So the evil is ignorance.
Ignorance is okay.
Now, having said that, you have plenty of stories of evil kings who are destroyed by, Diwali is about when Vishnu came in the form of Rama and killed the demon Ravana,